So, folks, Steven Crowder, I've long called him a closeted Nazi. Not because he's been shy about the Nazism, mind you, but, for other reasons. And he's really kind of come into his own in that role, specifically when it comes to just being a fascist. And I do mean that quite literally. This is not one of those situations where I'm saying, "Oh, he's a fascist," but like I'm somehow being hyperbolic. He put out a video a couple days ago titled I shit you not, The Case for Fascism." It's called The Case for Fascism. That's where we're at. And the thumbnail for the video reads, "We need fascism." Look at that right there. Incredible stuff happening over at the Steven Crowder channel. Let's take a look. What's his argument? He's making a case. Let's hear him out.
Even the bad fascists, they were a mistaken response to equally bad Marxists or leftists. And Marxism, communism, has killed far more people, and it's not even close. It's not even close. How often do you hear the accusation of fascism?
First of all, just to give some pushback on that coming up segment, capitalists often make this argument, oh, communism, socialism killed way more people, etc., etc., etc. And yeah, the authoritarian attempts to impose some form of socialism or communism have killed a lot of people. That being said, capitalism is far from having its own hands clean, especially when you look at the track record. When you look at the death toll from colonialism, which was driven by capital accumulation, when you look at the death toll of fascism, which is the merging of business interests with the interests of the state, when you look at the death toll that happens just in the day-to-day grind and deprivation that is spurred by capital, when it comes to, you'd have to throw in all the people who die every year because they don't have health insurance, all the people who die every year because they don't have enough food, enough water, because of the air pollution. You would have to also throw in all of the people who are dying as a result of, the oil and gas industry covering up their toxins in the atmosphere and global warming and their poisoning of different water resources. You'd have to look up the toll of all of that. And when you start looking at that, it starts to look like, oh, wait, actually the death toll of capitalism is quite large. I would also say that if we're comparing the death tolls, it's worth noting that the death tolls under communism and socialism that are largely attributed to communism and to socialism don't really have anything to do with the underlying ideology of communism or socialism, insofar as what is communism? Communism is a stateless, classless, moneyless society. So clearly the Soviet Union was not communist. Neither was China under Mao. These are instead authoritarian nation states that use the ideology of communism and socialism as a justification for their authoritarian practices. And when you start to look at the actual writings of, Marx, for example, the actual communists and Marxists and socialists, it turns out there's a very, very, very deep anti-authoritarian streak there. The entire purpose of socialism and communism in the first place was to address unjust hierarchy and unjust power structures when it came to economic distribution and economic power. And so what happens there is that actually seems pretty at odds when you start to look at the policies of China and the policies of the USSR, because you just traded one master for another. You traded your capitalist boss and the capitalist ownership for the ownership of the state. And then when you actually look at the actions of China and the actions of the USSR, what do you get? You get essentially state capitalism. You get the state doing all of the same things that the capitalists were doing, all of the same worker exploitation, all of the same infringement on worker freedom, which is inherently against the ideology they were espousing. I just want to throw that out there because if we're counting up the death toll here, I don't think you can attribute the death toll to socialism and communism, these ideas that are fundamentally at odds with worker enslavement, with worker, the degradation of worker rights. I don't think you can actually attribute the deaths that happened under these authoritarian regimes to the ideology that would have prevented those deaths, that would have denied the state power to kill those people in the first place. If we are adding up the death toll here, I don't think that China and the USSR are decent examples at all of what socialism or communism entails.
What do you think it means? All right. To begin with, communism, Marxism, socialism, responsible for at least 100 million deaths in the 20th century. Okay? Seems to me that should be the starting off point for every semester of history, certainly economics, when you're looking at different socioeconomic systems. 100 million dead minimum to begin with. Makes it pretty hard to say, religion is the cause of all wars, right? 100 million dead, communism, that's the toll. Now, when action is taken to disinfect a nation, and sometimes I will admit, very radical action taken to deal with the root ideology and systems that have led to the death of 100 million people, the left yells fascism. The problem is fascism has been used historically, not in the way that you've been told. It's been used against communism because with communism, socialism, right, you vote them in, you have to shoot your way out.
That's not at all true. I'm sorry, is there anyone who is so deluded that they think that Zoran Mamdani, a socialist, is gonna hole himself up in City Hall in New York City, and the United States military is gonna have to storm his office to pry him out? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? This is baloney. Also, it's quite easy, and many different economists and historians have attempted to find the exact death toll for example, the death toll of capitalism when it comes to wars. Some historians have put that number at over 150 million since 1914. And of course, if you're tracking the death toll of capitalism, it would include more than just war-related death, and it would include a much longer timeline than just from 1914 to today. Also, worth noting that, again, there are a lot of people who died due to capitalist decisions. Again, these people never want to actually play this game.
Don't leave once they attain power, and they nationalize the means of production, distribution, which, by the way, is the goal of Marxism. So you've probably been taught...
Wait, what?
Nationalize the means of production, distribution, which, by the way, is the goal of Marxism.
No! The goal of Marxism, if you read what Karl Marx wrote, is for workers to have ownership of the means of production, which isn't the state owning the means of production. Those are two very different things. There's a difference between you owning a share of the place that you work and having agency to decide alongside your coworkers what your pay is, what your working conditions are, what is done with the proceeds of your labor, etc., etc. That's actually calling for democracy in your workplace, you see. That is not the same as the state owning your workplace. This is a very clear distinction. So, like, I think it's worth noting here that Steven Crowder, right off the bat, doesn't know what Marxism is, what socialism is, what communism is. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
So you've probably been taught, or maybe not even taught. You just have teachers point to historical examples of fascists. Maybe even just one or two, and then go, see, fascism bad. Have you done a little bit more? Well, hold on a second. We always want to ask why. It doesn't justify it, but the left, who is so willing to ask why when someone commits a heinous crime against an innocent person and is willing to fight to get them out of prison, which they also don't believe in, that's a part of Marxism, they're not willing to ask why someone may have risen to power with a mandate of the masses against the representatives of an ideology that has killed again.
I can't wait for him to give a specific example and for it to be horrifically wrong. So far, he's speaking in rather general platitudes, and I am excited for him to try and become, as Ezra Klein would say, more granular and just utterly beefing it.
100 million people in the 20th century. So here's how we're going to define fascism. The way the left does. Every time someone does something to prevent the left from completely subverting a nation or to try and reverse course. The left wants you to believe that fascism, not Marxism, not communism, 100 million dead, is the biggest, greatest evil threat in the world.
We are witnessing a fascist takeover of this country. And I really hope the Republican Party wakes up to that.
All power is vested in the executive. It sure looks a lot like fascism.
Trump is literally a fascist. Point to one thing, ICE. Talk about everything Trump's doing that is fascist.
At this stage, we're pretty clear on the fact that Donald Trump fashions himself an authoritarian.
You know you're living in a fascist society when you're constantly going over in your head the reasons why.
I'd call him the most divorced man in the world, but I think Elon's got a stranglehold on that title.
Oh, Steven's trying to give him a run for his money, though. Absolutely.
Strange how Crowder will say teachers point at the results of fascism and say, fascism bad, when he literally did the exact same thing when he pointed at 100 million dead and claimed, communism bad.
That's an excellent point, Jazz Dog. Excellent point.
You're safe. What we want is a country where none of us have to feel that way.
Because at the end of the day, we have a fascist in the White House.
It's not like fascism might come here. Fascism has already arrived.
All right. That one guy who said, we want a country where everyone feels safe. I don't. What do I mean by that?
I don't want a country where everyone feels safe. Like, I want all the people that I hate to feel very unsafe. Holy shit. Yeah, no, only the people I like deserve to feel safe.
I don't want communists to feel safe. I don't want people who share the goal of subverting and destroying this country. They're not, just to be clear, Marxists and those in the American Communist Party or the DSA, they don't seek to destroy America because it's fascist. They've always sought to destroy America because it's not Marxist.
That doesn't even make sense. Like, it doesn't even make sense in the framework that he's talking about, right? Because his entire statement so far has been that Marxism is when you nationalize industry and the distribution of goods. Why would one destroy America if you need the nation state of America to nationalize industries? This man is going full mask off. He is a fascist. But number two, I hope that I'm demonstrating how he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about and is just like trying to say, as Jazz Dog pointed out, communism bad, therefore we must become fascist. Wow.
It's not communist. It doesn't matter who's in power. They want to bring us to... I don't want those people to feel safe. I don't want those people to rest easy. I don't want them to create a coalition and turn this into every single communist nation that has ever existed. Let's go through some historical examples here. One that's very commonly pointed to. And just to be clear...
Well, wait a minute. turn it into every single communist society that's ever existed, but like every single... The USSR and China were very different. The USSR collapsed. China did not. Like, what are you talking about? The other global superpower that rivals the United States right now, or will in the near future rival the United States, is China. And I'm not trying to say here China's good. Look at China. What a paradigm of human civilization. China's an authoritarian, despotic nation that's engaging in all kinds of despicable shit. I do not support authoritarian regimes. That being said, his example here is that, oh, well, if you become communist, everything is nationalized and your society, your country is destroyed. China still exists, and it exists in a meaningful way on the global stage. So, like, what even is his argument right now? Like, China is engaged in a large-scale capitalistic project. They have free enterprise zones. I won't say that they are a free country, because they're very much not, but, like, Steven Crowder has no idea what the hell he's talking about.
This does not mean that I am supportive of or justifying everyone in the fascist response, right? Everyone.
Not everyone, but some guys. You know, some fascists might have been good guys, right, Steven? You know, fascists whose last names rhyme with Mauder, you know, Chowder, rather. I don't know. Just seems, I will say, Steven does give off big, what's his name? Ernst Röhm vibes.
Hey, you know what? You know when it's really fun to be railed animalistically by a man who loves you?
Anyway.
Involved with that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm trying to provide you with some historical context. So case one, Chile. The story you were likely told, if at all, 73, far-right military dictator, Pinochet. You've heard this term a lot. It's become just a kind of a shorthand insult for a fascist. Pinochet ousted a democratically elected...
More like Peen O'Shea. Got him.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Elected Allende after a coup. Here, we see this from The Atlantic. The ultimate lesson of the 1973 coup that brought in General Pinochet's dictatorship was that the people would not, in the end, be denied their choice. Foreign Affairs in there, it says, Chile once boasted a longer history of stable democratic rule than most of its neighbors in much of Western Europe. Now it is the last major country on South American continent to return to civilian government after a wave of authoritarianism. All right. So Pinochet came in. Oh my God. Here's the reality. From 1970 to 73, do you know what created Pinochet? It was the Marxist Salvador Allende. Mm-hmm. Far left Unidad Popular coalition. I'll just say it, the Unidad Popular coalition. Socialists, communists, radicals. So what were the results, by the way? Why do you think...
I think arguably what created Pinochet was his violent armed coup that took over the country. I think that would be more arguably what allowed him to, run the country.
Pinochet is still popular today. You can't poll it officially, but Pinochet was immensely popular. Also left, by the way. Left of his own volition, which fascists don't tend to do. So why? Why would someone who was a military dictator, why would he come to power? Well, could it be because the socialist Marxists before him had inflation up 1,600%? Wages were down 35%? Wow. The socialist Allende responded with these price controls that, by the way, created an entire black market and enabled crime cartels. Basic goods were selling for like 142% over normal prices on the black market. So what happened was Pinochet, with overwhelming support, could have been anybody, let's be clear, went in and cleaned things up. Now, could you say that he went a little too far? Well, sure. Sure he had
Did he go a little too far with his roving death squads? Did he go a little bit too far with the tens of thousands of people who were disappeared and tortured? Yeah, maybe, sure. Okay, dude.
A few communists who went for helicopter rides and we never saw them again. But if you weren't a communist, you weren't at great risk. not whitewashing everything he did, as the left does with communists. But it was a response.
You know, I just want to point out, in case people don't know this about Pinochet, when he did his coup, he had his newly formed government send out armed squads of men to round up thousands of people and bring them to the national stadium and then systematically start executing them. Just as an FYI. But, you know, did he go a little too far? What's a little stadium murder between friends, huh?
So what did you see from 77 to 81? Average GDP growth was about 8%. Inflation.
Oh, well, you know, if the atrocities lead to 8% line go up growth, then, like, clearly we should be doing more war crimes. They're great for the economy.
Inflation fell to single digits from quadruple digits. Poverty went from 50% as a rate to 10%. Unemployment went from 15% down to 6%. And this cannot be stated enough.
According to Crowder, a contract that wasn't quite favorable enough was cancel culture, but he's cool with Pinochet helicopters.
Yeah, right. Also, worth noting that the CIA was involved in backing Pinochet. Surprise, surprise. There are some pretty compelling pieces of evidence out there indicating that the United States both propped up Pinochet prior to the coup and then fomented this situation that allowed Pinochet to carry out the coup. So, like, I don't know, kind of seems like maybe this was less, everyone was super dissatisfied with the Allende government, and instead the United States deliberately meddled in the government here in order to get Pinochet in charge.
Overwhelming support, Pinochet, from the people for his reforms. It became known as the Great Chilean Experiment. By the way, even after he left power, they kept Pinochet's constitution. Did you know that? Though I will say, as a byproduct, the natives of Chile did develop a persistent fear of helicopters that we're still working on.
Also, again, there are former CIA agents who have come out and directly said we were involved in the coup.
Apocalypto now.
I understand. By the way, for Pinochet,
gotta get the racism in there. That's very important for the Crowder crowd. You know, it's really important for him to be clear that, you know, he's Zen. You know, he's okay with all of it. You know,
I masturbate to meditation.
Oh yeah, he's that guy.
I just want you to know, like, those numbers that you gave were long-term numbers. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just like he did great for a short period of time and then it reverted back. These reforms seem to have held and had long-term great benefit for the country.
Yep. And by the way, they don't always hold.
No.
But it is important to note that typically when you think fascist, you don't think someone who comes in with a mandate of the masses and improves the lives for everyone.
Or leaves office.
Right.
That's a weird one.
Right.
Usually get rid of elections.
Right. Yeah. And I get it. Some people went on helicopter rides who shouldn't have. Okay. You think nobody else was being targeted under the socialist Marxist government? Have you looked anywhere in South America and see there's always a coup. There's always a coup going on. Right now, so I guarantee you there's a coup.
There's always a coup going on, especially if it was, you know, backed by the CIA. It's worth noting here that when they're talking about the economic growth under Pinochet, can anyone take a stab at what spurred that economic growth? What spurred the massive amount of profits generated by the overall economy? Anyone want to take a guess? What caused that massive spike? Weapons manufacturing. No, none of you got it yet. Selling of assets. Punky gal, ding, ding, ding. It was the privatization of nationalized commodities. It was the privatization of things that had previously been run by the government to make available to people at closer to cost. And so what wound up happening was that
we resist. We remain. Hope is an ember in the dust.
Hell yeah.
Spark of resistance to combust.
Kara Valmejar VT, thank you very much for subscribing. Appreciate you. But yeah, it was the privatization. It was that the economy was privatized, and essentially that Pinochet then went around and got the guys in his inner circle wealthy by handing off the previously national assets to each one of them, and heavily investing in mining, things like copper, right? And all of this, of course, is not in fact surprising. Largely because when you take a nationalized resource and you privatize it, it does spur economic growth for a time, until suddenly the drive for profits continues and the services get slashed, the product quality gets slashed, and then, really starts to go downhill from there. But the line appears to go up because wealth becomes concentrated into fewer hands rather than being dispersed. What's interesting here is that, this is not a sustainable state of affairs. It is limited in its utility. And really what wound up happening is that as Pinochet coalesced and got power, he did diversify the economy, to better set up his oligarch pals. That's essentially what happened. When you look at everything that happened, it turns out, creating a set of oligarchs doesn't actually work out in the long run. It actually destabilizes the entire economy. And when you look at the different economic development over time, what ends up being very clear here is that the economic miracle that they're talking about isn't quite that miraculous. A change in GDP per capita from 1973 to 1990. Well, let's take a look here. How is Argentina doing relative to, other countries here? Oh, it was at the bottom of the pack consistently over time. What exactly caused a lot of this? Let's talk about that. What exactly happens when you privatize, nationalize things right off the bat? It causes an economic shock. And that, in turn, caused a short-lived economic depression under Pinochet. This largely happened within the first year of him coming to power. It did dissipate, but as you can clearly see here from the chart, Argentina wasn't booming like, for example, Brazil, or Chile, Uruguay, or Mexico. It was instead doing quite poorly. So when they're talking about the boons of fascism, keep in mind that they were doing really, really fucking terribly. Yeah, they were poverty maxing. For sure. Ugh, God. And wouldn't you know it, when these things were privatized, do you guys think that they were sold at a fair price to, investors who were going to use and oversee these previously nationalized assets with an eye to making them better, more efficient, and all that jazz? Or do you think the opposite happened? Oh wait, Pinochet sold all of the government properties below market price to his friends and family members? Oh, wait, so he screwed over the people of Argentina? That's crazy. Wow, who could have predicted that? That's wild. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating to look at this and just be like, They did better than like people experiencing an economic depression. Argentina or Chile? Sorry, I was talking about Chile. Not Argentina. That's my bad. But the point here being that, like, when you're looking at this, the years under Pinochet, Chile was doing terribly. Chile did bad. And the best case scenario for him was, hey, from 1973 to when did he 1981? Yeah, Chile, the Chilean economy sucked ass. And you see here, it falls off sharply, and then you see it start to like gain some steam here, and then it collapses again. It is not doing a miracle here. It was still doing worse than Colombia at its height. It was one of the worst economies in Latin America under Pinochet. And this is one of the reasons I think that, like, Steven Crowder doesn't know what he's talking about. It's frustrating as hell. Sorry for the confusion, by the way.
Coup, if it's not going on out in the public, it's being planned. Someone's planning a coup. There's a coup meeting. Let's look at another case study. Brazil. A story you've probably been told. 1964 military coup overthrew democratically elected President João Goulart. The reality? Well, look, this president, the policies destroyed, as we saw before. You know, if it didn't take part in killing 100 million people as the rest of communism, well, inflation at about 100% was pretty bad. GDP non-existent, literally less than 1%. Pretty bad. So what did he propose? Nationalizing foreign oil refineries, by the way, seizing agricultural land, granting voter rights to the illiterate because he knew he would never win an election again. He doubled down on all the policies that were making everybody's lives miserable. And so what happened was the military coup came to, quote, complete the mission of restoring economic and financial order to Brazil. 64 to 74, the economic, you look at inflation, it was cut by 82%.
He cherry-picks statistics to push his own agendas.
Yeah, I'm still stuck on Pinochet here, because like part of this is that like the lesson that should be learned from a lot of Latin American socialist countries, right? And also Yugoslavia, for example, is that you shouldn't base your entire economy around one natural resource and one commodity that is traded internationally. And the reason I say that is because oil, like the oil bust, is what destroyed Yugoslavia's economy. And similarly, it's what fucked over Venezuela, because they built up social safety nets and social programs that relied on the price of oil in Venezuela and in Yugoslavia. And when that price crashed, they couldn't fund their social safety nets and everything fell apart, right? And in a similar way, when you look at the history of Chile, Allende's policies weren't the best, but what broke him and lost him his overwhelming social mandate was not those failures. It was the colossal crash in the price of copper, because Chile built its economy off of the value of copper. And when copper prices crashed, their economy went to shit. And that is when, again, Pinochet steps in as like a, I alone can fix it type guy. So like when we're talking about this, it's not as straightforward as, oh, everyone just hated the, the socialist policies of Allende. No. It was copper went bust and the economy of Chile went bust. And then that opened the door for Pinochet. That's it.
You look at the GDP annual average, right? Less than 1%. It went to 13%.
Wow.
Industry growth was up 30%. And again, the coup was supported by the people. So it's very different for people. When people hear coup, they go, a military dictator, a military leader.
Right.
When you live in a country that's been disarmed and a country that has been subject to actual corruption in a way that we don't know, this happens all across South America, there's nothing they can do, and so there can be a military to completely oppress and subjugate the people.
I will say there are some people on the left who think that the Chilean coup was made possible because the United States tanked the price of copper on purpose. I don't think that's the case. From what I've read, I don't think that's the case. It's more just every single socialist and communist who is involved in drafting policy for any kind of country should be aware that building your social safety net off of one, globally traded resource is a bad idea. It needs to be diversified. It's kind of like if you're playing a grand strategy game like Civilization, you need more than one resource. You need to have, a diversity in your economy. Otherwise, it all falls apart.
Or the military is used to liberate the people or used with the support of the people. Either way, the military is being used because the people can't do a thing. That's what happened in Brazil. The people actually had a huge, it was called the March of the Family with God for Freedom. And that actually took place before the coup happened, and it celebrated the coup afterward.
There's only one surefire way to make mad gains, because a strict diet workout routine just isn't enough. If you want to truly level up, you're going to need my proprietary pump poppers.
Hey, Haas, what's proprietary about that?
Steven, why are you selling poppers, Steven?
It's okay to like to feel being used on a carnal level. Hey, you know what? You know when it's really fun to be railed animalistically by a man who loves you?
You just gotta trust me.
I don't, though, and they clearly shouldn't. That's why here at Foundation, we really only sell 2 supplements that you can consume. Foundation Daily, a daily multivitamin supplement. Every single ingredient listed at its clinically active dose, and you can go check out the lab certificates available upon request on the website. And Foundation Creatine. We sell Creavitalis, a patented German 99.9%.
I'm sorry. In this scenario, is he supposed to be the big impressive man? Is he coming in to be like, you're flabby and not fit, but I, Steven Crowder, am swole. Look at how tight my shirt is. He's just taller, yeah.
Pure form of creatine, the most studied kind with no fillers or additional bulk wrap. Everything here is clinically proven to make your life better, unlike proprietary, what'd you call it?
Pump poppers.
What's in it?
I have a patent.
I bet it's crap. Go to Found.
Why Steven has struck a sassy pose here. Look at him. Hands on his hips, a little bit of a tilt. Steven, you sassy bitch.
FoundationDaily.com. Get everything you need. Nothing you don't. Proven science, zero secrets. That's your foundation. Visit FoundationDaily.com today. Subscribe, save 40% off for life. Case number 3. Go ahead, bring it up. That's fine. Here's a story you probably heard. Far-right Francisco Franco ushered in years of dictatorship after basically taking out the democratically elected government. This comes from The Guardian. Half a century on, the deeds and legacy of the man whose military coup against the Republican government ushered in a full-decade dictatorship built around the authoritarian ideology of national Catholicism continue to haunt, divide, and confuse 21st century Spain.
Confused?
They're so confused in Spain.
Didn't they have a male Miss Spain?
They might have.
Pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll find that.
What's the matter with you? Oh.
They're confused, all right.
Mister, what's the difference?
That's right.
A penis.
At this point, as you know, in life, a penis is hard to find.
Nice.
What is happening? I have a bunch of sound clips here on my board of this man saying incredibly homoerotic things.
I'm gonna look like a podling who's been fully drained. You want to feel like that man can't control himself because of this carnal, just unbridled attraction to you that he can't keep his hands off of you.
This guy is he's constantly talking about dicks. He's constantly talking about dicks and poppers and like dressing up. Like, dude, I'm flabbergasted. I've known a lot of gay guys, and like, this is gayer than anything they ever did. That being said, it is wild that he's about to go to bat for Francisco Franco, you know, the guy who allied with Hitler. But let's go.
Name that movie line.
I know it.
Careful! Gerald might try to finish you. All right. Here's the reality. 36 to 1939. You had this popular front coalition, communist, socialist, Marxist, right? What happened is they took power. They first mass released all of the other communist, socialist, Marxists from prison. So picture Arkham Asylum. They punished landowners and it instituted all of these incredible draconian agrarian reforms, forced the wealthy to take their money out of Spain. They ushered in what you know as the Spanish Civil War. And the result was what is referred to as fascism, where Franco seized power, but brought some stability, including cutting inflation in half. They don't tell you that.
What? He brought in stability by starting the Spanish Civil War? You know, nothing is stable quite like a civil war. I don't know how this man is able to try and make these arguments. Oh yeah, no. He stabilized the country by plunging it into civil war. A civil war so well known and reviled that it's the subject, specifically the collaboration between Franco and Hitler was immortalized in Pablo Picasso's Guernica, one of the most famous anti-war paintings ever made. It's huge. Like, this painting is absolutely colossal. But like, okay.
Almost tripling the GDP. Foreign investment, trade expanded. All of a sudden, you actually had private.
It's also worth noting that when we're talking about, look at all these developments. Yeah, because Spain was industrializing. In the aftermath of the Civil War and World War II, they were industrializing. Insane shit.
But business taking place. And what's funny is this actually encompasses the...
What's crazy to me is he's like, well, if you have a dictator, it's fine as long as the businesses are doing well, which is literally what fascism is. It is the alignment of private enterprise and a, authoritarian government.
Anarcho-syndicalism of Catalonia, which they try and tell you about as a success. That's how you know they failed, when you ask someone to point to a successful example of communism or socialism. They go, there are these groups that were pretty violent, but they were making it work most of the time in Catalonia. No, that's not true. And again, this was a man who had a lot of support from the masses, including, yes, the Roman Catholic Church and its constituents.
Yeah.
So if you have violence and violence, let's just really simplify it. All right, you have violence and you have violence. But in one case, you have violence, starvation, and poverty. In the other case, you have violence that stops mass starvation and poverty. You understand why the people of these countries don't share the opinions of the professors in discussing historical cases of fascism. Let's go to case 4, Bolivia. By the way,
Wait, that was it? Wait, I'm sorry. That was your entire argument?
All right. Yeah. So if you have, including, yes, the Roman Catholic Church and its constituents.
Yeah.
So if you have violence and violence, let's just really simplify it. All right, you have violence and you have violence. But in one case, you have violence, starvation, and poverty. In the other case, you have violence that stops mass starvation and poverty. You understand why the people of these countries don't share the opinions of the professors.
What's crazy to me here is that he's using the argument of, well, if you use violence and end hunger, that's fine. And that's what happens under fascism. Except that's not what happens under fascism. That's generally the goal of, like, the revolutionaries under communism. Like, what drove the anti-Tsarist forces in Russia was not, oh, we want private enterprise, we want a higher GDP. They were literally starving peasants who wanted food instead of to live under the imperial thumb of the Tsar. Like, I'm just like, it kind of just seems like you're saying violence is justified always for the side that has more money, right? Like that's the end conclusion of what he's saying, where effectively if your side has more wealth, you are always justified to act out of violence, which is, oddly enough, very fitting with an abuser mindset. It is the ideology of might makes right. Oh, I have more resources than you? Then I'm justified to do anything to you. Which is also, oddly enough, from, reading into the details of Steven Crowder's divorce, his ideology when it comes to interpersonal relationships with people he wants to or is married to. So, it's not surprising that he arrives at these ideas, but, this is actually just, stupid as hell.
In discussing historical cases of fascism. Let's go to case 4, Bolivia. By the way, all the references for these links are in the description. I highly recommend that you read up on this a little bit more, especially Pinochet. That's a fascinating story.
Also, can we just talk just for a minute? One of my favorite aspects of Francisco Franco's regime is that Franco was a huge supporter of the monarchy, and his entire dictatorship, he was like, I'm doing this so that we can restore the monarchy back to its rightful power and position. And when Franco left office, power was restored to the monarchy, but the Spanish royalty just turned the country back over to the people and turned it back into a democracy. Which is, I think, very funny and fitting and speaks well of them. So, good on them. They turned the country over to all of the forces that Franco hated during his life.
To see the boom that we saw economically in Chile. So the story you've been told with Bolivia, 71, U.S. backed.
Also, I just want to point out, they're still excavating mass graves from Franco to this day. Here's one of them. That is a mass grave of 26 bodies that were executed by Franco's forces during the Spanish Civil War. And this is from Estepar. This is still something that they are uncovering the totality of to this day. This is what Steven Crowder is caping for, by the way.
Dictator Hugo Banzer took power after a violent coup. By the way, there's of course truth to this. U.S. backed. Do you guys understand?
Yeah.
Again, 100 million dead from communism, the 20th century, and there's always some communist turd swirling around in South America. So of course, we're going to have a vested interest and go, oh wait, is there someone who's anything other than communist? Because we don't want that on our continent. So it doesn't mean that there's some crazy psyop. It means that there are countries that either were going to or had veered communist, and we kept our eye on it.
And it was almost always Russian.
We kept our eye on it and then, massacred people. Totally justified. Don't question it.
Backed communism.
Of course.
It wasn't just communism happened.
Right.
So we were fighting a proxy war, essentially.
Exactly. Anyone out there who thinks that Russia, China, Iran, that they don't play favorites in international affairs, you're a silly person. So the real story is 71. Yeah, Hugo Banzer took power after a violent coup. Let's read this from Harper's. It says, Banzer's 3-day coup in August 1971 was significant not only for the fighting that accompanied it, which left 110 dead and 600 wounded, but for the 7-year regime that followed, one of the most repressive in Bolivia's history. Here's the reality. Okay. 52 to 1970, Bolivia had this crazy leftist revolution. They nationalized mines, oil, a lot of land.
Oh, just as an FYI, because Steven Crowder, for obvious reasons, isn't talking about this. Franco is credited with killing 110,000 Spanish partisans in the Civil War. This is just in the Civil War. This isn't during his rise. This isn't after he rose to power. Also, Franco killed over 110,000 civilians. So cool stuff.
And to be clear, so very similar to what you see in places like Cuba, right? What they don't tell you is not only the people killed, but before you had a military coup. Let me ask you this. How do you think you nationalize mines, oil, or land? Where the government takes it.
The people, they willingly give it up.
Right.
They're tired of dealing with them themselves.
Right.
The government in America does that right now. The government in America can come in and be like, we need this land of yours to build like a sidewalk or to enlarge the road. Like that happens right now.
It's hard.
So that means guys with guns come and take it away. And very often you can go click these links. They don't list that as the same violence, or they don't put it in the same category as the coup that followed it. So they'll just mention like, well, they instituted policies. So when men come in and take your stuff, take your private stuff, your personal stuff with guns, it's a policy. When men fight those people with equal guns, it's a coup. So you see the scam?
That's not a scam. A coup is when you go in with a bunch of guys with guns and you kill the old government and take it for yourself. Like, it's when you overthrow the representatives of the people who were elected and install yourself and your cronies into power. That it's not the same thing as the government, like, coming in and, like, paying you below market price for your land. This is not the same thing. His co-hosts are such unconvincing lackeys. Of course they are. They're hired there to be yes men.
Being played. Then 70 to 71, you had the it was a leftist Tory seized power. Crazy, even more radical government, leftist government. And they basically replaced what you know as Congress with a workers' Soviet. So the result was Hugo Banzer, staged a coup with the support of a huge percentage of the population who were helpless and could do nothing. And what were the results? Well, you saw GDP double its historical average. You saw prices stabilize. You saw a foreign investment boom that you had.
What's really interesting here, the economic record of the Banzer years look quite good when taken in isolation. I wonder if we have a larger context for this. Bolivia's economic crisis. The economic record of the Banzer years look quite good when taken in isolation. Bolivian GDP growth averaged 5.4% per year, which was far above the average 2.4% during the whole period of 1952 to 85. Prices were rather stable except in 1974, following a major devaluation of the Bolivian peso. Investment as a share of GNP reached historical highs, as did government revenues relative to GNP, though the gap between government expenditures and government revenues widened. In an era of easy foreign finance, however, the gap was readily filled by eager foreign bankers. Few observers at the time realized the precariousness of the Banzer boom. Built as it was on a temporary commodity boom, easy access to foreign finance, and a narrow political base. Oh! You mean that the financial boom was actually the result of some external factors that Banzer had nothing to do with? Oh, that's so strange. That's so weird. Bizarre, even. It's almost like when you read the full when you read the full context, it almost turns out that Steven Crowder's full of shit and just cherry picks anything he wants out of context. That's so strange.
Not seen at any other point. So again, policies. They nationalized list businesses here. And then there was a violent coup against it. Let me ask you, you think the violent coup might have included some people who had their shit nationalized? So yeah, it doesn't mean that you should support every person.
Also, can we just talk for a second? Nationalizing something doesn't necessarily entail that government jackbooted thugs come with guns and say, you have to give us your national rail line because otherwise we'll kill you. And then they like take the deed from you and like walk home whistling. The government often pays, I'm not going to say always, but often pays the people who owned it. It gets paid for. It's bought.
With a fascist, moniker next to their name. But it also doesn't mean that it's accurate. And I think if someone says, well, look at the fascist, almost invariably, if you look throughout history, even the bad fascists, they were a mistaken response to equally bad Marxists or leftists. And Marxism, communism, has killed far more people, and it's not even close. It's not.
What's crazy to me is that if truly these leftist movements that he's talking about were as bad as the fascists, what we are talking about here would be way easier for him to prove. Like, all he would have to do is point at, here are the terrible policies. And instead, when you actually go and look at the policies that he's talking about, it's like, hey, there was a devaluation of our core commodity that we were using to price and like fund all of our, social safety nets. And then the economy went into free fall. Or, oh, hey, we wanted people to have food and for capitalists to stop robbing the working class people in our country. And then they killed us about it. Or it's like, hey, for example, because he's alluding to Germany here a little bit, like the worst ones. He's dancing around Nazi Germany here as an example. And what was going on in Nazi Germany at the time? Oh, they were saying, oh, hey, or pre-Nazi Germany, the Weimar Republic. Well, they had widespread inflation. Was that because of their socialist policies? No, it was because of the colossal amount of national debt that had to be paid off related to the Treaty of Versailles. Oh, well, what was it? Because of all of the socialism at the time that was threatening to, I don't know, nationalize things in Germany? Well, no, because the socialists didn't have the power to nationalize things in the Weimar Republic. They were trying to build power to pass more worker-friendly reforms. What was happening in the Weimar Republic? Oh, no, they were treating trans people as human beings and allowing gay people to, like, live their lives openly. I'm sure Steven Crowder would be against that. What were some of the other things? There's a lot of crickets in the air tonight. But on the other hand, you had the Nazis who were like, hey, we just need to take over all that land in Poland because honestly, all of those Poles are the ones that are stealing from us. And also those Jews in Poland are orchestrating our downfall, actually. And like, what's wild to me is that Steven Crowder's like, well, actually, the Nazis kind of had a point there. And it's like, wow, dude. Fuck you. Like, the big scary policies he's talking about are people saying, hey, what if we set minimum wages that allowed us to live? The big scary policies he's talking about are, hey, what if unions were able to negotiate on equal terms with their bosses? The big scary policies he is talking about are, hey, what if we had price controls to make sure food was affordable? He's saying, like, a reaction that is reasonable to that is for a fascist military leader to gain power and start campaigns of terror that kill millions. And his justification for it is to point at, Mao killing millions, or Stalin killing millions. And he's like, see, those guys killed millions, so really it's okay if fascists kill millions too. Because, they kill millions and people make money. Which, I want to point out, that's also how that worked in China and the USSR. the people in the inner circle of power, they always had special privileges. They always made out like bandits. The difference is he's just saying, well, I like the guys who had, more money. That's it. That's all he's saying. It's bullshit. It's might makes right gussied up as if it's a meaningful political ideology. And I find it disgusting.
Not even close. So rather than starting history at the response, well, the left deliberately doesn't want you to look just a little bit further. Just do this. Anytime you hear about fascists, whether it's Pinochet, whether it's Panzer, take your pick, just rewind the tape by 2 years. 2 years more than whenever the person telling you the story is starting off. They start off in 64, just rewind it to 62. They start off in 71, just rewind it to 69. You'll go, oh!
You know what? Actually, that's a great idea. I support this. This is a unique opportunity for me where I agree with something Steven Crowder said, which is, hey, when someone's talking about a historical event and you don't know what's going on, go look up additional context. That's actually great advice. And also, that's advice that is going to absolutely bury the points that Steven Crowder is trying to make. What is awesome about this is that Steven Crowder is saying this banking on the idea that no one in his audience is actually going to bother to go and look this shit up. And the reality is, if you do, you will realize how full of shit Steven Crowder is. So this is a win in my book.
Tech for me to get off. But I leave with a Skeletor fun fact. Remember, you pass your death anniversary every year, without ever knowing the date. Until we meet again.
True that, Random Druid. Thank you for the $10 super chat. Appreciate you. Thank you so goddamn much. And you have a good night.
Oh, I get it. Doesn't mean it's right, but I get it. Let me ask you this. What would you do in this country? What would you do in this country if you had an election, and I'm not saying that this has happened, to be clear, but if you had an election verifiably stolen, and then you had, let's say, the DSA come in, pack the courts, eliminate the Electoral College, legalize every single illegal alien in this country, and by the way, usher in another 20 million more, so that you would have socialism forever, and they would use that political capital and power to nationalize your private shit. Think you'd support a coup? Or would that be too...
Yeah, dog. What if America democratically elected a bunch of people on the left? Do you think you, a minority fascist in America, would support a violent coup against the government? Of course these guys would. Like, of course that's the conclusion he's trying to lead people to. But I'm here to tell you, hey, if there's a democratically elected government, you shouldn't coup it. What are you talking about? Yeah, if the majority of the people of America voted in socialists, we should abide by that. That's how democracy works. Now, he's trying to say, well, if it was stolen, but the problem is, Republicans think all of the elections that don't go their way are stolen because they live outside of reality. And Steven Crowder knows this because he just told his audience to go look up this shit, knowing that they wouldn't. Knowing that the people that they might encounter online who give them resources that are counter to their assumptions are going to be disregarded. Because fascism relies on anti-intellectualism to flourish. Fascism relies on a lack of information, upon a proud ignorance, upon a lack of self-reflection. And Steven Crowder knows this. It's why he's championing fascism here. And yeah, he knows they just want to be told what to think. Exactly. And so what I find interesting here is that it's clearly evil, but he doesn't want to engage on the actual policies of fascism. He wants to describe it as if it is an emergent dynamic that is, amoral. It is without moral weight, really, when you think about it, because it's just a reaction. You know, it's when you move that little, the little metal ball that you like swing, and then there are like several metal balls, and the other end swings, and it goes back and forth. He wants you to imagine that ideologies like fascism and communism are like that. Instead of making any actual argument about the ideology of fascism itself, instead of making any argument about the actual ideology of socialism or communism itself, he is trying to rely on you not knowing shit about history in order to say, oh, it's just a thing that happens. It's just like, you throw an apple up, it has to come down. It's like that. Just kind of seems evil. I'm gonna go a step beyond that. It is fucking evil. It's disgustingly evil. This guy is leading his viewers and then saying, hey, if a socialist wins an election, all you gotta think is that it was stolen, and then you are justified to do any and every act of violence in order to put a stop to them. That is his argument. His argument here is if you see a President AOC, if you see the Mamdani coalition growing, you're justified in killing them. That's where he's leading his viewership. And I think that's pretty disgusting. I think that's pretty gross, and I think that it's transparently fascistic. It's transparently vile. Because fascism as an ideology is intellectually bankrupt, morally bankrupt. It is a death cult that seeks to destroy both itself and everything it touches. Yeah, the argument he's making is that all fascism is justified. All fascism, to Steven Crowder here, is an emergent property of the universe and is justified because that's what it takes to be profitable and to kill, a far greater evil in his mind, which is just people wanting to have equal rights and wanting to not be exploited. And frankly, it's impossible to really read that as anything other than the most evil incarnation of the human spirit. Every evil inclination we have manifest at once. All that being said, folks, they do go on talking here, but I'm done with this. I don't want to sit for another 3 minutes with these clowns. All that being said, if you got anything out of this, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about all this. Again, I do want to apologize for, at one point in there, I was pointing at Argentina. I was trying to talk about Chile. I hope I recovered sufficiently, but if you want to roast me in the comments for that, that's fine. Mistakes do be done on a live show. All that being said, get organized, folks, because we need to get organized so we can be sure that no matter what happens, we can beat these assholes whenever and wherever they rear their ugly heads. So join your local Dems, join your local DSA, get involved today. And if you don't know where to start, you can join our Discord, reach out to Gamergy for help joining your DSA, reach out to Dragonfly for help joining your local Dems. And folks, if you want to do door knocking or phone banking across the nation outside of your local area, join Progressive Victory. There's a link down below in the description for that. And you can get hooked up into their organizing efforts for progressives all over the United States. All that being said, check out ImogeneOlivia.com, gender euphoric lingerie designed from the ground up for trans femmes, tested with cis men, cis women, non-binary folks. It is comfy, sexy, non-tucking lingerie. Go check it out. ImogeneOlivia.com. Got 2 new sizes, got a full restock, and a new color. Go check it all out. Link down in the doobly-doo. And let's keep on going.
Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather around. Twitch and YouTube and switching streams. All that content is bursting the scenes. Politics, being plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.